Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming in a new Diablo 4 build video. Today I'm back from our Rogue for what has been a real surprise to me. The Barrage Rogue is quite literally the easiest rogue build I've ever played. Effective and straightforward. In both single target and AoE, you absolutely fly through the dungeons thanks to its ease of use and very practical nature. I never really thought, after what had become my favourite rogue build, which is the rapid flurry double core build, that I would instantly find something comparable in strength and fun. So compared to the flurry and rapid fire double core build, which essentially has you using flurry for AoE and rapid fire for single target, the Barrage build simply does both in one ability at close to medium range. Naturally, it's not going to be as strong as either, it's more of a jack of all trades, master of none style. That concept should actually be very appealing to anyone that wants to maybe try Rogue out for the first time, or simply level really efficiently to 100 because of its ability to speed clear nightmare dungeons. Of course, compared to the double core build, you've got an extra ability slot where you can work in all kinds of extra skills or utility. For me, I use Poison Trap because it provides attack speed, damage reduction, an extra knockdown, and more. With Barrage, you're either pressing yourself against the single target you want to kill, or playing at a close to medium range to cone shoot into a pack of enemies. Combine that with Shadow Imbuement, it leads to mega fast pack explosive clearing, or just popping a target elite next to instantly. It's really simple. You smash out a basic pack with an imbued barrage and it's just done, or a couple regular barrages. Maybe you'll commit harder and make sure your barrage always has combo points ready, vulnerability up, the imbuement, your tricks of the trade procced, your expectant aspect ready to destroy absolutely anything you hit. It really, of course, depends on what you're facing and how hard you actually need to go, because you can do it all super quick and so it flows really well. Barrage does have a downside though. Having to press yourself relatively close for even AoE or right up against the target for single target naturally leaves you a bit vulnerable to damage, because there's a lack of penetrating shots that could cause issues in larger packs of enemies where a random mob maybe tanks the hits you want to hit a specific target. So the skill of the build is really about accurately landing your dash to land on target to successfully hit them with the barrage, or you can just simply shadow step directly to them. So using barrage comes down to what range you're firing from and making sure the arrows are hitting the target or targets you want them to. But yeah, having said all that, I'll circle back to how I opened this build video. This is the easiest rogue build I've played. It's been super effective at clearing dungeons at a really good pace, letting me fly up the last couple of levels in a really enjoyable, very casual way. So with all that explained and said, let's talk about the build. As always, we'll start with the skill tree, and I'll just quickly scroll down so you can see where I've spent all my points if you want to pause the video. But to begin with the basics, it's still puncture. It's still so good for providing CC and slow, and with fundamental puncture, it generates a ton of vulnerability as a top tier way to do that. As this is a combo points build, the basic attack here will actually generate your combo points incredibly quick, which we'll get to. Then we come to our core, where of course we're using Barrage as many levels as you can get, 5 out of 5, and item contributions we'll talk about later. Each arrow has a 20% chance to ricochet off to an enemy one time. We can improve that with an aspect. The ricochet chance is increased to 100% for arrows that are ever damaging a vulnerable enemy or critically striking. So this is where you have a choice between improved and advanced barrage. Improved is the lazy version, as I'll call it. Every third cast of barrage just guarantees making enemies vulnerable, which obviously works with enhanced barrage perfectly. However, we are generating vulnerability through our puncture, which we are using, so doubling up on vulnerability through improved barrage is basically great for speed clearing and being lazy. But undeniably, advanced barrage is going to provide you with more damage and DPS potential immediately, because it means whenever your barrage actually ricochets 4 times or more, you get 20% crit strike chance. That's quite palpable and there's a lot of potential there, but I must admit, between testing both of them, I found improved barrage to be more consistent, and as this is the easiest build in the game for Rogue in my opinion, I want to do what makes it smoother overall and more consistent, so I go improved. For the passives, we go 3 out of 3 on sturdy for the close damage reduction, and I'd love to go 3 out of 3 on siphoning strikes, but we just can't afford it. 2 out of 3 though gives us healing when we critically strike close enemies to a reasonable amount. Next, our agility tree. We of course take shadow step, enhancing it, and then going for methodical, so we have a hard CC stun on targets we're looking to teleport to, and then instantly barrage for single target. In regards to dash, as always, I just take 1 point for the actual ability, and then we get just enhanced, so the enemies we dash through are now taking 15% times increased critical strike damage for us, which is a major damage scaler. As always, 3 out 3/3 on weapon mastery. This is an incredibly powerful aspect of rogue builds as a whole. Everyone's going to be taking that. And then we have concussive, because this is indeed using Mangler's aspect to get knockdowns and dazes through that. Concussive means when we knock back or knock down an enemy, we gain critical strike chance against them up to 12% more. And then with just one level in trick attacks, this is how we're getting knockdowns. When you critically strike a dazed enemy, which we're getting for our Mangler's aspect, I'll explain later, they are then knocked down. You only need 1 point in that to actually knock them down and then start getting concussive benefits. Down on the next tree, this is where we're just getting 1 level of Poison Trap and going for Enhanced Poison Trap because it knocks enemies down when it activates, further synergizing again with Concussive. For the passives, the all-important 3/3 Exploit, massively improving our damage to healthy and injured enemies, and then Malice, which massively improves our damage to vulnerable enemies. You can see I've got 3 extra levels to 6 out of 3 on this from item contribution, we'll talk about in the gear section. Next, we have our imbuement section, where I am running, of course, Shadow Imbuement at the max level 5 out of 5 with some item contribution. We're going to go ahead and enhance that and go for a mixed Shadow Imbuement to make it more likely that it pops and kills everything. We don't need to go for a blended because we're generating more than enough vulnerability with our Barrage and our Puncture basic. As we are using Poison Trap though, this is where we're getting the big benefits passively from that. We're going to go Deadly Venom 1 out of 3 just to unlock the next tiers, where we want 3 out of 3 Debilitating Toxins to reduce the damage by 15% of any enemy affected by poison, majorly beneficial in AoE, and of course single target for keeping us alive. And then 1 level in Alchemy Advantage means we get 1% increased attack speed for each enemy we've poisoned, stacking up to 15%. In an AoE pack, you can easily get that very high very quickly. Next, I go 3 out of 3 Frigid Finesse, giving us 15% times increased damage to chilled enemies, and even more, doubling that to frozen enemies. Only reason we have this is because we're using the unique boots, Penitent Greaves. So if you do not have those and you're running the alternative version of the build that we'll talk about again in the gear section, you won't take these 3 points, at which point you could even fill out Alchemy Advantage, and with the last point, get 3 out of 3 on Siphoning Strikes, which is what I would probably recommend. For the ultimate tree, we're not taking an ultimate, so for the passives, 1 into Adrenaline Rush gets us 2 haste, which is going to give us attack speed or movement speed depending on the current energy, and Trap Mastery, as we are using Poison Trap, means when that activates, we get 12% plus increased critical strike chance against any vulnerable and crowd control enemies, such as knockdown or dazed enemies, which is just fantastic. For the key passive, we are using Marksman as our main damage dealing abilities, so Precision is going to give critical strike damage improvements to our Marksman skills per stack of Precision, which we build up by using Marksman skills such as Puncture and Barrage. For the specializations, as I mentioned, we're using combo points, so that's what we're taking. Moving on, we have the Paragon boards, which I'll just quickly scroll over the ordering of them if you want to pause to take a look where I spent my points. We're currently level 87 though, so keep in mind we still have more to get and more to place. From the beginning though, we are going to be going from the bottom to the right to the prime node, coming up and around to activate the glyph, where we have Ranger. Ranger simply makes you take 10% reduced damage while having a ranged weapon out, which is obviously awesome damage reduction, but even more important than that, it also enhances our Marksman skill damage flat out, which is of course both Puncture and Barrage, core aspects of damage in this build. So Ranger in the first board just makes a lot of sense because you can get a lot of decks on this first board. Make sure you get at least 40 and pick up the rare node Lawless, and of course Skillful, and come out to the top on the left, where as always it's exploit weakness for probably every rogue build in existence. This improves your damage to vulnerable targets, which is everyone, so obviously we're always going to want that. We'll enter the board and come up to the left though first to activate the glyph, where we have Combat, which again is probably going to be on every rogue board using exploit weakness together. This improves the critical strike damage of your core skills, pretty much core to every rogue build. It requires 25 intelligence to get going, and that's very easy to get on this board on this glyph socket specifically. Please note that these 3 points are now me leveling this up more. You want to get the secondary effect active and then move on to the next board and come back to this eventually when you're quite high level like me to actually come back and level it up even more. Make sure you get the 25 intelligence going and leaving to the right to make your way to exploit. Improving damage to vulnerable targets, which is amazing. Coming up and left and around to pick up the actual legendary node. Then from there coming up to also pick up Unassailable to give us some damage reduction from vulnerable targets, which is nice. Heading right to the next board where we are. This board, much like my double core build is the Cunning Stratagem board, and it's a skip board. It's a fantastic skip board because it gives us a really quick access to a glyph and also dominant the rare node, which is amazing. Through this board, we're able to get 5 glyphs in the build, which is really important. We'll head to the right and up on the board to actually get to the glyph socket immediately, where we have, of course, Exploit, another one that all rogue builds will use because we're so based around vulnerable damage. This one requires 25 strength to get active, which again, you can easily get active on this board in this glyph socket. While we're here though, make sure to pick up Lawless for the defensive armor and Finisher to improve your core skill damage, which is obviously majorly important. Also, all of the magic nodes around here are pretty amazing, like core skill damage and extra armor, so definitely worth picking up. We'll leave this to the right to come down and also pick up Dominant, which is going to improve our core skill damage even more, which is why this board is just so effective for the glyph and this rare node in particular. From there, we'll leave up and to the next board, which is indeed the Tricks of the Trade board, another really important one for rogues. Tricks of the Trade basically makes your next Cutthroat or Marksman skill deal up to 25% times increased damage, which is amazing. In this build, we have Marksman skills in Puncture and Barrage, and we have Cutthroat skills in Dash and Shadow Step. So basically the idea is you will always dash through targets or Shadow Step to a target, which will proc Tricks of the Trade, enhancing your next Marksman skill, which should be Barrage, to make it do way more damage. Anyway, we will enter this board by heading up and to the left to come to the glyph socket, where we have Chip. This is great because it's going to enhance your physical damage, which Barrage indeed is, as well as many of your skills. And its secondary effect means physical damage will also increase the damage an enemy takes from you, scaling up to 10% times for 15 seconds, which is a really long time. Very nice in single target fights, strong elites or boss fights, scaling up your damage in a very important way in a longer fight. This requires 40 dex to get going, which is also really easy to get on this board. But if you're lower level than me, try to min-max to 40 dexterity, and I guess ignore Lawless if you have to. Working your way left and around, picking up the dex and making sure you go through Focused, up and around, and then down to Tricks of the Trade. From there, we will leave the glyph and the board to the left, making our way to the final board. This board is the No Witnesses board, which is always a great one to end on because it gives you a really quick and efficient route to a glyph socket. And it also has the Knowledge rare node, which increases your damage by 20% if you're able to get all that intelligence. We will enter this board by heading left and up and around, and then pick up Turf, giving us some all-important more damage reduction, this against close enemies specifically, and giving us a different damage modifier for more damage increase in terms of damage to close enemies. It's another one to easily activate with 25 strength required, and we'll want to pick up both rare nodes as well for their benefits. From this point though, this is where we actually double back and start leveling up other things, like making sure we actually get all the rare nodes in our glyphs and getting more levels to improve the main passive of the glyphs, prioritizing Combat, Ranger, and Exploit first. Okay, time to explain the gear. We are running 2 uniques in this build. First up is Condemnation, which you will want to run with any combo point build. It just means your core skills deal up to 40% times increased damage when spending 3 combo points, which is what you generally always want to do. And it also means your basic skill has that chance to actually generate 3 combo points on 1 use, which is really nice. Then the other unique is Penitent Greaves, which improves your damage to the enemies that it is chilling by leaving a trail of frost up to 10% times, which is really good. If you do not have this unique, then my alternative suggestion is Ravager Aspect on the boots to give yourself another Shadow Step charge. With that explained, let's go through the weapons. First up, we have our crossbow for the vulnerable damage passive that has, with, as always, Edge Master's Aspect, as it is so insanely effective. Up to 40% times increased damage based on how much of your main resource you have, and if you have full, the more damage it gives you. We are generating tons of energy and fighting a lot at full energy, so this is a major damage increase. The other weapon that is not the unique is the Expectant Aspect, which means your basic skills generate damage through next core skill cast up to 30%. So it stacks up to 3 times, meaning every 3 punctures, you're ready to spend, guaranteeing that you synergize perfectly with generating 3 combo points and 3 stacks of Expectant before you pop a Barrage. Now let's do the armor, starting with the helmet, where we have Manglers, a top tier offensive and defensive aspect. Dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has a very high chance to daze them, which, as we know for our skill points, will then, when we crit that dazed target, they get knocked down. All that CC is going to be great for controlling enemies and reducing incoming damage, as well as improving your own. For the chest piece, we are going Might, 20% damage reduction after using a basic skill for up to 6 seconds, which is permanent uptime in this build. On the gloves, we're going Rapid. Basic skills gain up to 30% attack speed. We want lots of attack speed, so puncture generates combo points and the expectant aspect very efficiently, as well as generating our all-important energy to get the most out of Edge Masters. On our legs, we have Disobedience, the best defensive aspect in the game, generating a load of armor by attacking, which is a load of physical damage reduction. Then we have the boots. Again, if you don't have Penitent Greaves, just go Ravagers on a pair of boots. It's a good pick. For the amulet, we want to enhance the power of a barrage. Branching volleys aspect means your barrage arrows have up to a 38% chance to split into 2 arrows whenever they ricochet. This just generates a lot more AoE power and DPS in general. For the rings, we were going Accelerating. Crit strikes with your core skills improve your attack speed, so further empowering puncture to do its thing. And Loop of Corruption. Your imbuement skills have up to 40% times increased potency against vulnerable enemies. We puncture, we barrage, we pop with the imbuement, dealing way more damage on that pop because of the corruption aspect. And that's, yeah, already all of our aspects explained. Let's now talk about what is on our gear, starting with important stats to get. On your helmet, you're going to be looking for ranks of Shadow Imbuement to empower that as much as possible. On your gloves, you're going to want ranks of Barrage. Your core skill, of course, wants to be empowered. And then on your amulet, you're looking for ranks of passives. This could be imbuement levels, it could be malice, it could be exploit, or best of all, it could be weapon mastery. When it comes to our offensive affixes then, we're looking for crit chance and crit damage and vulnerable damage as always. After that, attack speed is going to be great, dex is going to be great, core skill damage, physical damage, and then improvements to your imbues, such as imbued crit damage and crit chance. Lastly, for defensives, it's standard fare. Improved armor and health and damage reduction itself are the best options. Then damage reduction from close and far damage is always going to be great. When it comes to gems, we're using the maximum health improvements on our armor. We're going for improved critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies as always on all of our weapons, and skulls for armor on our jewelry. Next up, it's time to talk about how to optimally play this build. As explained in the introduction section, to be honest, it really depends on how hard you need to go. Many basic packs will just require a couple punctures and a barrage and they're dead. If for any reason you need to go harder, you can imbue pop that pack and just keep moving. But it all comes back to puncture, right? Puncture's generating vulnerability on the targets. It's generating your combo points, which you always want to have 3 out of 3 on. It's also generating your expectant aspect, meaning after 3 punctures, you have 30% improved damage to your barrage. So before you do anything, generally try to send out 3 punctures and then go from there. If you want to go harder, then you want to pop a trap to get the passive benefits of that and knock down those standing in it. Dash through targets to improve the next marksman skill, aka barrage, and increase your critical strike damage against those you've dashed. You can also do this by using Shadow Step, but I would always recommend use dash first because it improves your damage. And Shadow Step is a get out of jail free card. If you get stunned, you can Shadow Step to break out of it, which is huge. Also, if there's an annoying target like a specific elite you want to kill, Shadow Stepping straight to them and then barraging them is fantastic. But yeah, that's the flow of the gameplay. How hard do you want to make your barrage hit? Generally always have 3 combo points and 3 stacks of expectant. Try to build up precision and pop it on your barrage. Imbue when you need to pop extra hard. Drop a trap every time you want to improve your damage, so every pack it has 4 stacks anyway. And make sure to dash through targets to improve your damage to them and immediately use barrage to benefit from the Tricks of Trade proc. But there you have it. This is ultimately a slightly weaker version of the Rapid Flurry double core build, but one that is much easier and straightforward to play, leading to incredibly fast clear times and a really enjoyable playstyle. Barrage should then logically be a great stepping stone to lead you to the double core build, because you're able to get Barrage up running a lot faster. After all, I've had to do nothing to really keep my energy flowing in terms of gear and aspects, so getting this to go early, maybe in Season 1, could be a great idea. I've enjoyed this so much more than I expected to coming from the double core build. I could easily see myself grinding out to 100 using this just because it's so efficient. But either way, I hope this has been interesting or even useful to you. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.